Welcome back to the Algarve. Well, 2023 is set to be one of the most exciting years for new bikes that I can remember. There are so many fantastic looking new models coming out that I've found it hard to keep this list to just 50. Compare that to last year's video that only had 10. Anyway, an asterisk next to the statistic at the bottom of the screen indicates that it's my best guess, and I've put the bikes in alphabetical order by manufacturer with chapters to make it easy for you to skip to your favourite. I'll be as concise as possible with the voiceover, and I'll put each bike's vital stats at the bottom of the screen so I don't have to spend time reading them out. But even this would have meant a very long video, so I've decided to split it up into two. This is part one, covering Aprilia to Honda, and I'll put part two up, covering Indian to Yamaha, sometime next week. Apologies to fans of the future, but no electric bikes, as they really don't float my boat yet, maybe in a couple of years. But at the end, I will give you the top 3 bikes that I personally am most looking forward to trying next year. So after what is probably my longest ever intro, let's make a start. Now, I've ridden the standard RS 660 and it's got some serious poke with plenty of low-down torque for what is only a mid-size sports bike. The standout feature of this Extrema edition has to be the reversible shift pattern though. At the flick of a switch you can opt for a race-style inverted gearbox with first at the top and 6 where first usually is. Carbon fibre exhaust saves 3 kilos of the standard version, giving a very acceptable power to weight ratio of 1.6 kilos per horsepower. But maybe the best bit of all is this oh so 90s paint scheme. Lovely. Or how about the RS V4 x-trenta, 230 horsepower, propelling just 166 kilos dry, quite literally eye-watering, as is the price, €60,000. You do get Öhlins all round though, with Brembo GP4 MS brakes and magnesium wheels, but only 100 will be made. So if you are lucky enough to have 60 grand burning a hole in your pocket, I suggest you get down to your local Aprilia dealer sharpish before they're all sold out. A recurring theme in Aprilia discussion groups I've noticed online though is reliability, so I'd make sure said dealer isn't too far away. Back down to earth, in all senses of the word, with the Benelli TRK 800, designed and developed in Italy, built in China. We've been promised this mid-size adventure bike for 2 years or more. With 76 horsepower, we're on a par with the likes of the BMW 750 GS, but a bit like with its smaller sibling, the TRK 502, weight is an issue. 226 kilos dry makes it a fair bit heavier than its competitors. An adjustable screen, handguards, wide saddle, beefy suspension, and a 21-litre tank mean it could be a good long-distance traveller though, and with a bit of luck, it could come in below the €10,000 barrier. The Benelli TNT 500, the engine's taken from the 502C, the Leoncino and the TRK. This is a bike designed for beginners really, unlike the TNT for Torno Naked Twin 1130 from a few years back that was a real beast. No, here we get an A2 license friendly 47-ish horsepower, but striking looks and some decent components including 50mm front fork and monoshock, both adjustable for preload and rebound, as well as twin front discs with 4-piston radially mounted calipers. The Brixton Crossfire store is named after a rocky outcrop in western Scotland, a mid-size adventure bike that looks a bit like the Husqvarna Norden 901, especially at the front. But this, of course, is entirely coincidental because the Cromwell 1200 looked just like a Triumph Bonneville T120, so absolutely no pattern there. Handguards, engine crash bars, and Audi all-road style plastic covers on the tank, as well as a wide windscreen that seems to incorporate side deflectors of some sort, do suggest a bike that's been designed with rider comfort in mind. Now on to BMW. I must admit that I get a bit lost with all their M, R and S suffixes and prefixes, so let's see if we can clear things up a little. First you get this, the S1000RR, 210 horsepower, 3 more than last year, 197 kilos wet, all for a relatively reasonable €21,000. The taller windscreen could prove useful when approaching the 306 kilometers per hour top speed, as could the optional wheels, forged aluminium for €1,350 or for maximum track day cred full-on carbon at 3,600. Then comes this M1000R with the same 210 horsepower and plenty of torque, which for once on a race bike comes in relatively low down. The front wings look impressive, but only develop a fairly average 11 kilos of downforce at 220 kilometers an hour. The brakes are the same as on the RR model. Suspension is fully electronic and the wheels are forged aluminium. And for an extra €2,000, you can have the almost obligatory Akrapovic exhaust. All yours for a relatively reasonable 23,000. Sitting right at the top of the testosterone scale is the M1000RR. For an extra €10,000 on top of the poverty spec R, you basically get the ultimate track day weapon with an extra 2 horsepower. But carbon everything, front wheel covers to improve aerodynamics, brake caliper cooling ducts, even bigger wings offering 16 kilos of downforce this time at 250 kilometers an hour, a top speed of 314 kilometers an hour or 195 miles an hour, and an Akrapovic exhaust as standard. More up my street is the R1250 RS. Now this is one of those rare sports tourers that is actually perfectly happy being both a tourer and a sports bike. A bit surprising then that for 2023 BMW has deleted the pillion seat and foot pegs in favour of a rear seat cowl, at least with the sport and triple black paint schemes. Other than that, very few changes, but the price has only increased by about €100 on last year's model, which given the state of the global economy at the moment is a pretty good deal. Let's round off my BMW selection with the slightly left field Urban GS. Why left field? Well, the looks for a start, maybe it's just me, but it seems a bit of a mashup of half a dozen genres. You've got the shaft drive of a tourer, the overall stance of a modern classic, the high front mudguard of an adventure bike, and the torquey engine of a top-end roadster. Nothing wrong with that per se, but I can't help wondering who would actually buy one and where they would ride it. It seems to be the sort of bike you'd buy on a whim if your main preoccupation while out and about is looking for looks, but at €16,500 it is an expensive indulgence. BSA showcased this rather tasty Scrambler prototype just this week at the MOTORLIVE show in Birmingham, and I could get quite excited about this. Fantastic looking Scrambler, 650cc, so not too powerful, right way up forks with good old fashioned gaiters where they should be. The only thing is, what's happened to the Gold Star that BSA showed us 2 years ago? They keep teasing us with these bikes. This Scrambler is a concept, taking deposit and signing distribution contracts with the likes of Peugeot motorcycles, but as far as I know, no customers have actually taken delivery of their Gold Star. Now I know companies have to keep pushing and innovating, but I just hope this isn't going to turn into another Norton. Next, the NK C22 from CF Moto. Now we probably won't be seeing this until the tail end of 2023, but even in prototype guise it certainly looks the part. Not sure the single-sided swing arm will make it into production due to costs, and the same goes for the carbon fibre brake caliper cooling pods, but the attention to detail and overall design and dash certainly seem to confirm CF Moto's intention to move upmarket. It will be getting the 95 horsepower 800cc engine from the MT800, which I didn't find particularly inspiring, but at least it means there'll be an A2 friendly version available. A quick, if overly simplified reminder for those of you outside Europe, to ride any bike here you need a licence of some sort. A car licence will do for bikes up to 125cc, any more and you need a full bike licence. But even when you've got a full bike licence, you're still limited to 48 horsepower for the first 2 years. The 48 horsepower can be in the form of a restricted or detuned version of a more powerful bike, but only up to an unrestricted maximum of 95 horsepower. It's basically designed to stop people getting their license and then running straight out and buying a 200 horsepower Ducati before they've had a chance to master their roadcraft. In reality, there are lots of sub-clauses and exceptions, and rules vary from one country to another, even within Europe. But in a nutshell, that's how it works, and that's why you tend to see a lot of bikes coming in at around 47 horsepower and around 95 horsepower or less. Another good example of a bike falling into this category from CF Moto is their new CLX 700. Slightly ungainly looking, and 204 kilos dry means about 220 kilos wet, which is quite an ask for a 70 horsepower 695cc engine, but it should be relatively affordable and accessible. Now, I rode the standard MT800 Touring a few weeks ago, and while I was initially very impressed by the level of equipment and the perceived quality in the showroom, the riding experience left me a little cold. Link to the test in the top right now if you're interested. This new for 2023 Explore Edition gets, on top of everything else, heated seats, a full complement of luggage, a quick shifter, a larger full-colour screen, and switchable ABS and traction control. The problem, as before, is going to be the price. Now, viewers in Asia and Australia have told me that CF Moto is much more competitively priced in those markets, but here in Europe, they're simply too close to established leaders like the Triumph Tiger 900, and any savings you do make at the time of purchase will be more than cancelled out by the massive hit you're going to take when it comes time to sell. CF Moto does seem determined to break into the premium market though, as witness this MT800 Sport R version, a sort of budget BMW S1000R I suppose. Bright colours, 17-inch wheels, Brembo radial master cylinder and EICMA brakes, SC Project exhaust, and many carbon trinkets. No confirmation yet as to whether it will actually enter into production though. Now on to Ducati and their outrageous and deliciously politically incorrect Diavel V4. I rode the first iteration a few years back and the acceleration scared me witless, so this new model with its V4 engine and quad exhaust that's styled like a grenade launcher should be an absolute hoot. Some might lament the fact that we don't get the full power version of the V4, but 168 horsepower for a relatively modest, compared to the Triumph Rocket for example, 223 kilos wet, should give you plenty of excitement. Huge price increase this year though, and I'm not 100% about this rear light. Reminds me of the electric heater we had in our student accommodation in the early 1980s. If you are lucky enough to have that kind of money to spend, then you might also like to consider the Panigale V4R. 218 horsepower, 241 with the optional race spec exhaust. It will also now rev to 16,500 RPM compared to only 16,000 last year. Yours for a mere 44,000 euros, but as the Ducati CEO said in a recent interview, there's no entry-level Ferrari, confirming the idea that Ducatis are set to become an even more exclusive brand. Which almost makes the Multistrada V4 Rally look like a bargain. Kitted out with a beefy sump guard, side protection, fatter foot pegs and 20mm more suspension travel, it looks like the ideal off-road weapon. But with a wet weight of 260 kilos, it's really more of a long-distance tourer, especially now tank capacity has been increased to 30 litres. 3 versions available, with the snappily named Multistrada V4 Rally Full Adventure Travel Radar at the top of the pile, with a price tag of 32,000. You could almost buy 3 Scramblers for that price. A 4 kilo weight loss this year means it's now down to a very manageable 185 kilos wet. There's a new 4.3-inch TFT screen with the now obligatory smartphone connectivity, and a ride-by-wire throttle also means 2 rider modes, road and rain, traction control and a more sophisticated cornering ABS. The rear shock is henceforth centrally mounted. There's a new seat and the bars are lower and slightly closer to the rider for improved comfort. There's an up and down quick shifter, and as the revised engine still produces just 73 horsepower, there'll be an A2 license friendly version available too. Now, one model that is definitely not designed with beginners in mind is the Street Fighter V4. Equally at home on the road or on the track, Ducati has tweaked the 2023 model to keep it competitive with the BMW M1000R. New engine maps, rider assistance and an engine braking system that detects how fast you're braking and adjusts accordingly. You get a better screen, 220 horsepower with the optional Akrapovic exhaust, and a revised quick shifter. There's a V4, a V4S and a V4 SP, ranging from 23 to 36,000 euros. And to round off Ducati, we have the new Monster SP. Okay, it was revealed a while back, but first deliveries aren't scheduled until February, according to my dealer, so I'm slipping it in here. The same 111 horsepower as the standard model, but this time with fully adjustable Öhlins front forks, rear shock and steering damper, a Terminioni end can and a mini fly screen, all for an extra 2,800 euros. Just a pity the headlight reminds me of a hospital bedpan. Now, I don't know about you, but there aren't many Fantic dealers where I live down here in Portugal, and the few that there are rarely have demonstrators or even bikes on display in the showroom, which is a shame because I quite like the look of this Caballero 700. It uses the crossplane engine from the Yamaha Tenere and MT-07, both of which I've ridden and both of which I enjoyed, and better than that, Fantic have incorporated a ride-by-wire system, meaning we get 3 rider modes: road, off-road and user. There's also a new TFT screen, albeit only 3.5 inches, and rider aids, including lean-sensitive braking and cornering ABS. An asking price of around €10,000 probably does put it very close to more established competition though, and the BSA Scrambler I mentioned earlier could give it a run for its money. Final manufacturer in part 1 of this video, Honda, and let's start with the 750 Hornet revealed a few weeks ago at Intermot. Now, many have criticised its looks as being a bit too generic and too close to the CB500, but that's Honda for you. They have to sell their bikes around the world, and so will always go for the most consensual and cost-effective design. That's why they've used the same headlight from the CB range, and personally I don't see the problem. Of more interest to me on an all-rounder like this is the riding experience, and from the initial reports I've seen on the press launch in Spain this week, the engine is a bit of a peach. Good exhaust note, free revving engine, low down grunt, on a par with the sprightly MT-07, but much better mid-range pull and top-end punch, so that'll do me fine. The non-adjustable front suspension has been criticised for being too soft and diving too much when you're gunning it, but that doesn't really come as a surprise, and of course it does have the advantage of giving greater comfort around town. I'm looking forward to trying it myself in a couple of weeks. Now, of more interest to me personally is the forthcoming XL750 Transalp, which uses the same engine as the Hornet. It was the talking point at EICMA this year, and certainly the bike I was waiting for. If you're a regular to the channel, you know that I've just ordered one, so you'll forgive any over-the-top enthusiasm here. In a nutshell, the Transalp would appear to give me exactly what I dreamt of when I was riding around on a CB500X 3 years ago. That's to say, good value, easy to ride, excellent reliability, great dealer network, and parts availability in just about every country on the planet, a frugal engine, and a good range of aftermarket accessories. A 500X with more power, twice the power in fact, which was my main criticism of the 500X. Plus, I genuinely like the looks and this paint scheme, and I'll finally be getting those gold wheels you wouldn't let me have on my Speed Twin. I want to try my hand at long-distance touring next year around southern Europe, possibly with some light off-roading along the way, and I think the Transalp hits the sweet spot. I would have liked a 19-inch front wheel, cruise control, and a bolt-on rear subframe just in case, but there's no such thing as a perfect bike, and this is about as close as I'm likely to find. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on the bike, which is due for delivery towards the end of March, beginning of April, then you might like to consider subscribing. Honda also unveiled their CL500, a sort of full-size monkey scrambler that's sure to appeal to beginner riders and maybe those looking for a second bike for bombing around town. They're certainly optimising their investment in this 471cc model range. We've already had the CB500F Roadster, the 500X Pocket Adventure Bike, as Honda themselves are now calling it, the CBR 500R sports bike, and the CMX 500 Rebel Cruiser. Unlike the latter, which gets 16-inch wheels front and rear, this CL500 gets a 19 front and a 17-inch rear. The seat is also more traditionally styled with a passenger in mind, although the large and slightly awkwardly placed exhaust does seem awfully close to where the pillion's right leg will fall. The tank only holds 12 litres, but as average fuel consumption is only around 3.5 litres per 100 kilometres, 80 mpg UK, 67 US, a range of 300 kilometres should be achievable. And finally, the CMX-11 Rebel Touring, basically a bagger version of the existing model with rigid panniers and a batwing front fairing. Engine from the Africa Twin with the option of the DCT automatic gearbox. You only get one brake disc up front though, albeit a 330mm, but it's something I'm never keen on, and as here it has to haul up the 400 kilos or more total weight with rider, passenger and luggage, it really would have been nice to see a second disc. Right, that brings us to the end of part 1. I'll be posting part 2, Indian to Yamaha, in a few days' time, so if you've enjoyed this first part, then feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the fun next week. And as always, thanks for watching.